I'd like to call our legislative committee meeting for April 6th to order. And it's a beautiful day today. I want to thank everybody for being inside, working on. We'll start our meeting with public comment. Are there members of the public here who would like to comment on any items? Not seeing any public comment, we'll move on to our one action item for the day, which is the approval of our minutes from our February meeting and our March meeting. Yes, Commissioner Long.
I have a bunch of questions that I wrote down as it relates to the minutes, and I just wondered if this was an appropriate time to ask them, or did you want to wait till after we approve the minutes and then?
No,
because they're not amendments or anything.
Go ahead.
To the minutes. And maybe it would be more appropriate now that I aren't verbalizing what I just said to wait until we hear the reports, and then some of my questions might be answered. Maybe.
Okay. Whatever your pleasure is. You want to approve them now or make a motion? I think Commissioner Johnson, I was hearing, was about to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for
Second.
the last meeting. Thank you.
Both meetings.
Both meetings.
So there's a motion to approve the minutes from the February and the March meetings, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. We're next going to move on to our federal legislative update. And Harry, I guess I'll turn it over to you. We have Steve Palmer on the phone, and if you could introduce your colleague Chandra, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, are you on the phone with us?
I am.
Okay, great.
Good morning, Steve.
You're missing a great day in Florida, Steve. It's 80 degrees and sunny, so sorry you're not here with us. So I want to introduce to the committee Chandra Price, who works with Steve and I on this contract. And like Chandra hasn't had a chance to meet you yet. Maybe give a quick introduction of your background.
Okay, my name is Chandra Price. I am actually the owner and creative director of my own company, which is Price's Writing and Editing Services. I started in 2005, and I assist government agencies, small businesses, and corporations with what I consider content-driven material, and which is a big need nowadays with the internet. But that consists of websites, brochures, newsletters, press releases, blogs, really anything under the umbrella of public relations, communications, and government relations. And I actually came into contact with Van Scoyac years ago through David Jolly. Him and I did several different projects together. And when this came around last summer, we talked about it. It was just a great fit. And, I'm assisting with what he says, making things look good.
And sound good.
But I try to be more technical than that. But, I assist with presentations, editing, and really preparing materials that kind of translate the Washington speak into more public speak and, layperson terms. But I'm very excited to be here, and I look forward to assisting with more projects.
Thanks, Chandra.
Thank you. So we had so with that said, I don't know if we have a presentation here. Sorry about that. She helped us with a little bit of a PowerPoint to talk about. And the first thing you'll see when she pulls it up is I want to give a little brief, and I understand Commissioner Long did a great job at the board meeting talking about the Washington trip. And Steve's on the phone too, so he can give his comments. But I think that your board did a great job. Your Commissioner Rice and Commissioner Long and Brad and Cassandra did a great job in Washington on the trip. We had is this ready to go? There we go. So the commissioners did a great job in Washington. We had a pretty aggressive legislative schedule, and they can talk. We did not. Steve was at the after portion of the meeting. I was not. But I attended all the congressional meetings they had on Monday, and Steve will brief you in a little bit here on the meeting with the FDA. We saw the office of Congressman Jolly, we saw Senator Nelson, we saw the office of Congressman Ross, and we saw Congressman Bilirakis on Monday. And I would say on both days that the two takeaways that we really heard from these meetings, they were really excited to hear that you all were working together with HART. The fact that you were coming together and working to unify the community into their transportation needs was a well-received message, I think, at all the offices we went to. The other thing, they were excited about the Tiger Grant proposal, and that it encompasses an 8-county area, and that it'll help all 8 counties, and it'll streamline the process of riders moving from one county to the other, make the process move more smoothly, and also allow you to gather some great data on your ridership. So I think that was a great message. On Tuesday, we met with Congresswoman Castor, the Office of Congressman Rooney, and then the final meeting of the day. And I have to tell you that Brad did a tremendous job. The APTA folks had a press conference that afternoon to talk about new initiatives with Uber and Lyft, and Brad was on the panel and just did a fantastic job, really raised the visibility of PSTA nationally at that press conference. I think he did a fine job. So it was a good day. It was a quick visit. As Steve and I had talked to the board about it, and to Brad about it, it's a tough time that particular week when APTA's in town, because there are thousands of people with transit interests all running around trying to see the same people. But I think we really did make good use of our 2+ days there. Steve, did you want to add anything as far as the visits?
Well, I think you covered everything pretty well, Harry. I don't know if you want me to mention at the FTA meeting. I'll just say really quickly, we met with Beth Day, and who is the head of the planning office, and they're the ones responsible for evaluating all the criteria for small start projects like ours. And she was, while she was non-committal about anything in particular, she was very positive about both the revised schedule that the PSTA has put together and the fact that we're doing outreach with the Atlanta office and working very closely with them to try to address all the issues. She indicated that there was nothing particularly that she was aware of that could be a problem for her, but obviously we need to continue to work closely with them.
So that was on.
Yeah, and I'll just add as update the next critical step with FTA and the Central Housing Bus Rapid Transit Project is to get FTA to approve of PSTA's what they call entering into the project development stage, which essentially means that the project is started and we can start doing the design that we received the funds from FDOT to make happen. And at that meeting, Beth had received our request, which we had submitted, and had some comments. And as Steve just said, it was very positive. And then I know our staff has had back and forth correspondence, and I think I saw the last email was pretty darn positive. I thought that most or all of the questions that we needed to be answered.
Yes, we had very few questions. In fact, they said that our letter was far more detailed than they usually expect.
Yeah.
So they were quite happy with the letter overall. The only question that they had was the availability of the FDOT funding, and we have since sent them a letter written by FDOT, signed by Ming Gao, the Intermodal Systems Director, confirming the availability of the funding. And so that should seal the deal in terms of the clock ticking for our 45 days for them to approve us.
And then one of our legislative goals for the year is to continue to make sure that the FTA Small Starts program is fully funded each year, to make sure that there's not a backlog created, so that when you do come up at a time to request federal funding for this BRT project, that there's not a backlog in the queue. So last year Congress fully funded all the requests, and hopefully that will happen again this year. So that's on your legislative agenda.
And Harry, if I can just jump in on that, just so that the committee knows that the House and Senate Appropriations Committees are expected to start marking up their FY17 bills, starting as early as next week. So we'll start to see some movement both in the House and Senate on the transportation bills.
So going back to our Washington visit, we did talk extensively during all the meetings about your Tiger Grant application that's coming up with HART. As I said, there was great support among all the offices we visited about it. As you know, your Tiger Grant is an 8-county project, and it encompasses 8 House congressional districts, and obviously the 2 senators. And the one thing I would say about the Tiger is the one thing we did hear from most of the meetings is Florida's very upset that Last year, Florida didn't receive any Tiger grant funding as a state. That's the second time in, I think, the 7 cycles that they've gone through the Tiger application process. And the previous year, they only received 1. So there was a great interest among the delegation at fielding some good Tiger grant proposals this year to try and get them funded. And the fact that when they heard that you all had an Eaton County project that would be supported by as many as 10 members of Congress was, bipartisan members of Congress was very well received. So one of our projects now is to, in the next couple of days, to get a letter signed by all of these members of Congress that can be submitted with your application packet at the end of the month. So that's, we're working with Cassandra and the folks from Hart to get that letter signed and ready for your application. So the other thing we did hear about,
Harry,
we have a
sorry.
Hold on one second. In those few comments that you just made, I think it would be important for you to know and maybe stress as well that Pinellas County gave up its own initiative to do an application to be able to support this joint effort that we're doing with Hart, and that's a big deal for us as well. So I think it does show that there's a huge, big interest from the political leaders and I'm hoping that Hillsborough Commission will do the same thing, although we haven't heard yet.
I think they told us it was going to be on their agenda. I think their commission agenda. And I know the county commission, Pinellas County Commission, just approved a letter that I think the PSTA now has to go with the application in support of this project. So you're right, and I know the other cities and the chambers are all writing letters of support too. So that's a huge. The fact that there was no other competition really in the Tampa Bay area for the Tiger program is hugely important. And that was the first question that most of the officers asked: is anybody else going to submit a Tiger grant application this year? And it was good to be able to say that the answer was no.
Good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And then the other thing I would say is Congressman Jolly did, and we have a video clip. I think we circulated to Brad. I'm not sure if he circulated to the board.
Yeah, I watched it.
He did beat up pretty good on the Secretary of Transportation over the fact that Florida didn't receive any Tiger grants and that there seemed to be a bit of politicization of the Tiger grant program. I won't play the clip, but he told me he doesn't think that he's on the Secretary's Christmas card list anymore. In fact, he suggested, and we talked to Congressman Castor about this, that Congressman Castor probably ought to take the lead on the joint congressional letter for this, since she does represent the largest part of Hillsborough County, and let her take the lead on that with Senator Nelson. But Congressman Jolly did elicit a bit of a response from the Secretary about the Tiger grant. I think he made his point, and I think that Senator Nelson told us in his meeting that he also raised this issue with the Secretary, and so hopefully that'll help the process. I think Congressman Castor also indicated that in the meeting that she had raised with the Secretary too her disappointment in Florida not being considered. So hopefully that lays the groundwork for a successful opportunity. The other thing we've been working with you all on is monitoring you have an application into the FTA for a low-no electric bus grant. We were kind of hoping the FTA would make those decisions, those announcements sooner, but when we checked prior to your committee meeting, they're not going to make their announcement on the low-no award winners until the summer. In the meantime, I'll let Steve talk about this in a minute. In the meantime, they have put out an RFP for the next round of low-no grants. As you recall, the federal transportation bill that Congress enacted last year continues the low-no competitive program. So the next application request for proposal is out. Your applications are due by May 13th, so you'll have to apply for your next round before you know what the outcome of the previous round was. So that makes it a little bit difficult. And Steve, I'll let you talk. There's some other grant opportunities that are coming out too, based on the federal legislation that was enacted last year.
Well, Harry, thank you. Let me just add on the two pending grant solicitations that Harry mentioned. The low-no grant application process for this next round is slightly different than last year. Last year was focused on the research and development type approach. And what Congress did to pass that bill, they changed the program. So it's just now really on trying to address the typical bus age and safety requirements, but also to environmental quality, and stressing the fact that they just want to see that transit agencies can build in zero-emission buses into their fleets. It's less of an R&D program and more of a deployment program now. On the bus facility program in Lowdale, the one thing I would stress in terms of the criteria that FTA is looking for and the DOT is looking for is this ladders of opportunity. They really want to see how a grant application can help bring people to, to schools, to jobs, to healthcare. They really want to show how, not that just you need a new bus system or you replace the buses, but why is it that the buses are needed? How is it going to help the riders? And so I would encourage you, as Cassandra and others, as they prepare the grant applications, they focus on this ladders of opportunity, because that's going to be something that Secretary Fox is going to stress. In terms of what area, not to say quickly, that the other grant applications, those are the major ones from FDA. There is Compliance to Wellness. It's a very small $5 million grant program, but that's focused on just trying to get people to healthcare. I'm sorry, I think I got something wrong.
Thanks, Steve. Commissioner Long?
Yes, Steve, this is an example of what I think should be in our application. Tell me if I'm on the right track. For example, you know that the route from downtown Clearwater to Clearwater Beach and then Clearwater Beach back and over to the airport is really becoming a fast-brewing, critical issue in our county and in our region. To the point that the brand new Opal Sands, which just opened last month on Clearwater Beach, their manager is really struggling to fill his managerial jobs at the Opal Sands, because those folks do not want to travel out to the beach and back home every day. On top of that, he's got several hundred employees that he needs to hire for that facility, and he can't find people that can travel back and forth. Once they get out there, there's no place to park. So that would be critical, right? Because we have 4 more of those great big resorts that are coming online on Clearwater Beach later this summer.
Absolutely. No, I think, Commissioner, you're exactly right. And I think all I was trying to encourage you to do was to stress the impact on the riders as opposed to the impact on PSTA, so that it's clear to them to do exactly what you just suggested, that is the reason we need these buses is because this is going to help people get jobs.
Well, it's not even just the employees and the people that need jobs out there where they need to be employed, but it's also the high-level number of tourists that come to our area.
Exactly.
So,
Mr. Chair, another example which I just learned that's happening later today, which I think feeds right into this letter of opportunity, and maybe we can now incorporate this into our pending bus application. I've been invited to participate in a little grand opening of a business in, I guess it's in St. Petersburg, off of Gandy Boulevard near Pinellas Park, and you're all welcome to attend. I don't know if you've been invited. And I just learned that Congressman Jolly is planning on being there for this grand opening, where it's a newly relocated business with 600 plus employees that called PSTA, and because their survey, over half their employees access their jobs by the bus, by transit. And they moved their location to this expanded facility. It's like a call center operation. And there was no bus. And so their first day that they started there in January, half their employees didn't show up. And so they called the mayor of St. Petersburg and PSTA, and we were showing our flexibility and commitment to reach out in the community, and we have rerouted the route so that it serves that major job center.
where is it?
And so they are loving us. It is on. It is right off of Gandy Boulevard and just north of Gandy and 102nd Avenue.
That's Pinellas Park.
It's not in Pinellas Park. It's just east of the St. Pete Housing Authority building there on the north side of Gandy Boulevard. It's right in the middle of a lunar land site of construction of the Gandy overpass at 4th Street. And a lot of their patrons, employees, were walking through the FDOT construction site. Very unsafe.
Now you've oriented us, because we all know where that is.
Right, that's where it is. Anyway,
Well, that's great, and we certainly hear, loud and clear that we need to be emphasizing that theme and the service we're providing for our riders in all of our communications with regard to the efforts to obtain federal funds. So, Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, the thing that I think we need to emphasize to our economic development folks who are working with businesses like this to make the connection to transit in advance so that we don't have to struggle after the fact. But what route do we need here?
It's the Route 74, which goes down Park Boulevard. It's a very good high ridership, high frequency route that goes right through Pinellas Park, but then it connects over basically to 4th Street and the Gateway Transit Center there by the Target, and that's.
Would that also support the St. Pete Housing Authority? Because that 44th thing goes over there as a loose appendage.
Perhaps, quite frankly, I am learning, and I think it's changing every single day. The construction right in that area is changing the routing
It's horrible.
on a daily basis. Just learned yesterday that on the day of ribbon cutting, they had closed down the intersection and the access to this whole business, but then FDOT opened it.
Well, I think it's a great story. It shows our flexibility. It shows the importance to exactly what we've been talking about. So, let's go back to Harry and Steve.
Steve, one other question.
Yeah.
I know last time you were here, we had a conversation about wellness and trying to use the public transit to get folks to their medical appointments, and we had talked about that the last time. This the wellness grant that they have out for an RFP. Would that be something that the PSTA should look at too? And I apologize for having this conversation with Steve, because Steve and I haven't seen each other since these came out. So, Steve.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, I don't have the criteria of the grant program right in front of me, but I do recall the conversation, and I do think it's important that we, let's explore it and figure out whether or not that's something we should apply for.
I would be more than excited for that because being the most densely populated county in the state of Florida with the highest number of people that are in need of that kind of transportation disadvantaged.
Yeah.
They all fit that criteria. They all are under 150% of the national poverty line. They all have qualified under illness, Medicaid, jobs, the veterans. We have everything covered under all grants.
We'll definitely look into this wellness riding program.
We need it.
Yeah.
Steve and I want to work with Brad and Cassandra and get some information to you on that too. It's a lot of work. 3 applications at one time will be difficult, I'm sure, but we'll make sure you have all the information.
Well, and as Commissioner Johnson said, I think we have maybe a unique opportunity, so we'll look into it.
Use all the uniques we can get.
Yeah.
And then the final slide has a big question mark. Steve alluded to it. He gave the optimistic side on the appropriations and budget situation for Congress. As you know, this is a very truncated year for the Congress. I think that the delegation that went up last month heard that from the members of Congress with the political situation, the political conventions in July. There's really a short window for Congress to do their appropriations work this year. That said, Steve's correct that the Appropriations Committee is going to start drafting up its 12 individual appropriations bills. The transportation bill is usually somewhere in the middle of that. Not sure whether the House will actually consider these bills on the House floor, but they will get through the committee. We will continue to make sure that things like Tiger Grant, the competitive bus program, the small starts, all those kinds of things that you're interested in continue to be funded, so that helps you out and gives you a competitive advantage down the road. But we're not sure what the outcome will be. Congress will certainly pass a temporary appropriations bill to keep the government running through the election, probably come back in after the election, November, December, and wrap up their appropriations bills, which seems to be the new order of the day. But we'll continue to give you updates. I think Steve provides a weekly update to Brad, which he circulates, I think, to the board on what's going on in Congress. So unless you have anything else, Steve, we're available for questions if you have any other questions for us.
Any questions for our federal affairs team? What's it?
My question is, how are we going to approach, or when are we going to approach changing whatever legislative thing that we need to do for the Sandy Beach Treasure Island problem?
Okay.
Are you
Well,
talking
is
about
that-
the bridge?
No, I'm talking about the $650,000 a year that we get instead of.
Talking about the St.
Ad
Pete,
valorem
City of St.
taxes.
Beach and Treasure Island are not currently members of PSTA and not assessing the ad valorem tax revenue.
Okay, let's
That's-
discuss that, but I want to hold off and just finish the federal
right.
discussion on federal issues right now, since
Okay.
we've got Steve Palmer on the phone. And yes, Commissioner Long.
I would just like to reiterate once again how valuable the services of Van Scoyoc have been for PSTA, and how tickled and pleased I am with the level of service, for lack of a better word, that they provide to us, because both times that I've had the opportunity to go to DC to meet with our congressional people and our transportation folks at the federal level, Harry and Steve have just been, I can't even tell you how gracious and kind they have been to us in terms of walking us around and helping us find our way and finding shortcuts to make the most valuable use of our time while you're there. And if you've ever been in the Capitol government complexes, that is not easy, let me just share. If you think Tallahassee is tough, try DC, because every place you go is a checkpoint that you have to pass through. So Harry and Steve's guidance has just been incredibly invaluable, and I can't thank you enough.
Well, we appreciate having you there. I think you all did a great job. We told the chairman we need to get other folks up there to experience that. I think it's good. And I think Steve will probably bear this out. I think the fact that you come up, make this a routine to come up every year is important, because it establishes those relationships. And when you walk into those offices, they know you, they know your issues. And I think just keeping that repetition going is really important. So I think you've done well.
Well, thank you guys for your work, and I also want to thank you, Commissioner Long, for taking the time to go, and our board chair, Darden Rice. I agree with you, Harry. I think it's really terrific that we have board members that have made the time to make the trip. I have a question on the Tiger Grant decision timing. I mean, what is your thinking as to when that decision might be made? I know it's sort of like reading tea leaves, I guess, but...
You mean the Lono or the Tiger?
The Tiger.
So your Tiger application is due April 29th.
April 29th.
And so, Steve, I think we had heard they were hoping to make the announcement sometime in the fall. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, I would not be surprised if it could be made as early as August, certainly September, because they want to avoid the appearance of being really overtly political. So, but being the end of this administration, it's going to be this summer, late summer, early fall.
Okay. And is the idea that the letter, this joint letter from the members and our two senators would go in with the application? Is that
I think what we talked about was we will have a copy to go with the application, and then we would also have the members of Congress send the letter in directly to the secretary so that he gets a copy separately from the application package, so it stands out above the package too. So we'll do it both ways.
Okay, great. Any other questions on federal issues? Okay, well, that was a great presentation. Thank you guys, and we very much appreciate your work. Let's move on to...
So
yes.
I have a question
Yes.
for, I think this is for Chandra or maybe Brad. On this page, the last page of our presentation that Harry gave to us, it talks about the Lono RFP for next year that's due by May 13th. Are we going to be submitting an application? Is it going to, what is the priority? Is it the Clearwater out to the airport?
Low stands for low or no emission
Right.
buses.
Right,
So it's for electric buses.
okay.
And as Harry was mentioning, we already have an an application turned in to the federal government, and they are reviewing it, and that, as the PowerPoint shows, we haven't heard whether we got that grant, but the deadline for this is May 13th, which is before we'll know. So essentially, I think we're going to turn in almost the exact same grant and just keep pounding them with the same message.
Excellent.
It's a good application.
Brad,
Thank you.
on this, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to say, if you meet with Congressman Jolly, you know that his sister is blind.
Yes.
And he's very, very interested in what we do with transportation disadvantage. So he's really,
How much you that to him today?
well, he's very, very much into it. Okay.
Great.
Great, okay, well, let's turn our attention now, I guess, to our state issues. If there are no other comments or questions on the federal issues, and Harry and Steve, thank you all again. Chandra, thank you for joining us. Okay, you all are, of course, welcome to stay for the rest of our discussion here. So, Brad, you want to start and then introduce our
Yes.
state lobbyists?
Thank you. So we are moving forward with post Tallahassee session, which is maybe good that it's ended. I don't know. And
It's always good when it ends.
I don't know if we have anyone else on the phone from.
Not from my team, nope, just us.
Okay, so we have welcome Robert Stewart and Alan Susky, our state affairs. Robert, you want to kick us off with?
Yeah, sure, just a quick, and Alan and I will kind of tag team here, but a quick update on the session as a whole. They did finish on time, a nice change from last year. In fact, we're not going back. We're not going back yet. In fact, this month, April of this year will be the first month since October of 2014 that the legislature's not in Tallahassee for at least some time during a month. So they've been very busy with both last year's legislative session and then the multiple special sessions that ensued and committee weeks and all that stuff that keeps them very busy. I think they are as excited as we are not to be back for at least a few more months. There is a possibility of a special session related to workers' comp, depending on how a particular Supreme Court case shakes out. But other than that, there's no expectation of them coming back to Tallahassee. They did pass the budget. The governor actually preemptively vetoed or preemptively made his line item vetoes before he even received the budget, and that happened about 2.5 weeks ago. About $250 million in total vetoes, a symbolic number of the $250 million that he wanted for economic development. I don't think there was any. I don't think that was ironic. I don't think it was by accident, I should say, that he vetoed that amount of money. 50 million or 55 million of that amount was actually just a veto of a trust fund sweep. So it was really only about $200 million in real projects, which is significantly lower than he has vetoed over the last couple of years. There was some talk about him vetoing so much in projects that the legislature might come back to override, and the legislature sent a very strong signal. The Senate almost always passes the budget unanimously or close to unanimously. The House never does. It's almost always a party line vote. This year it was 119 to 1 in the House. And it was a Republican that voted against it. And so John Biden, who you know.
Oh, I do know.
Yeah. And John votes. Who votes no on everything. Votes no on everything. So the legislature sent a signal down to the plaza level that we are not afraid to come back if we have to, and I think that probably played at least some role in how much the governor decided to veto. But all in all, a successful session for us. We can get into some of those details. I don't know if you have any other.
No, I think that's the capture. I think it was, as Robert said, it was a very productive session on a number of issues. There wasn't the House Senate back and forth as much as we've seen in past years. Even members of our own delegation here in Pinellas County seem to get along, which is sometimes a new trend. So it was very productive. I think that all the conversations we had throughout the session, transitioning, I would say, not changing, but transitioning our strategy to fit the desires of our legislators, specifically the Clearwater TIA project. I know we discussed that at length throughout the session, but with the veto threats hanging over and the success, quite frankly, of the Central Avenue BRT program, as you know, as we've discussed in the past, Senator Latvala and others asked us not to request that be a line item in the budget. There was a very strong signal from the governor's office that individual projects like that were for operating funds. Again, remember, this is different. The funding of the TIA route was very different than the Central Avenue route in that it was the operating funds, and they gave a very strong signal that they would veto that. And so the senator, along with Senator Brandis and others, asked us not to request that as a special project, and we obviously complied with that and said that was a great idea. And they are all working diligently. Now, they kind of take, as you can imagine, you know, you've got the slog of committee weeks in session, especially, as Robert mentioned, they've been there for so many months in a row now. They kind of took a break, as we all did. Everybody kind of took spring break. And in a couple of weeks, staff members are kind of getting back into the flow of things now. Representative Latvala has a copy of the letter that we talked about, Brad, to support that project within the DOT, within the district, not only at central office in Tallahassee, but the district office as well. And he has asked that we allow him to lead the effort with the House members, the House delegation, to gather the signatures on that letter to support the project. His office is looking at the letter. I'm sure they'll have some edits and they'll do some things to it, as they always do, and he will shop that around. But you know, I think in our visit to Tallahassee, we were able to talk with every member of the delegation about that as a priority, and I think they all, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, I think they all agreed that it sounded like even those who don't represent the northern part of the county realize the tourism impact of that route and of what we're trying to do, and I think they've all agreed that it would be a positive thing for FDOT to work with us on. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, by the next meeting, we'll at least have, if not all, some signatures beginning to be signed off on in those letters. So again, it was a great session, and I think that was a you know, even though it may not have been in the budget, I think it was a success, and everyone agreed to support it and helped us develop a plan going forward, similar to the Central Avenue BRT line that obviously was.
And then the item that did end up in the budget, we talked about this, was the $200,000 for the study on the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. And Steve and Harry talked about the importance of going to Washington and letting them see you and delivering your message straight to the legislators and their teams. The same is obviously true in Tallahassee, and the $200,000 that got input in the budget for that study was completely a PSTA priority. It was completely a product of taking the time out of your schedule to go to Tallahassee and deliver a message about how important it is that they look at how they're funding TV. And so we had to make a trade at the very end. We talked about that. And Brad and I were on the phone late one night talking about that trade. There was a passionate member from the Jacksonville delegation who wanted to see the $8 million in money that had come back to the state from Miami-Dade be spent on rural areas. And had that money originally in the Senate budget been allocated back to everybody through the formula, we would have gotten a piece of it. But the formula we know is broken. And so the trade that we were asked to make was, look, let that money go to rural, and in exchange, we'll make sure the study gets done. And I think long term, that's going to pay dividends for us. Now that the budget's been signed and the vetoes have been issued, the budget doesn't become law until July, so the money is not available to the commission for them to hire a consultant until July. But I think now that the break is behind us and people are starting to focus again, Alan's point, I think now is the time to begin engaging with the commission to make sure that we're at the table when that study begins to happen. Not surprisingly, it became very quickly a priority of FPTA, the Florida Public Transit Association. Many of your transit agencies around the state, your partners, feel the same way y'all do about the urban versus rural split between the TD funds. And so we allowed them, so that it didn't look purely like a PSTA priority, we allowed Lisa Bacot and her team at FPTA to kind of be the voice, the mouthpiece of this, even though there is no secret to those in the process that this was a PSTA deal. And so kudos to you and your team for being there, and we'll start ramping up efforts with the TD Commission to get them engaged and start doing what we can to impact that study.
And to build on Robert's point, I think it is important that we continue, that the strategy continue to be that this is not although PSTA is involved, we're certainly, we did kind of create this, we did push for this, we did accomplish it, but I don't want, Robert and I have talked about this, I don't want this to become a PSTA driven issue publicly. I think that creates an us versus them mentality between some of the rural counties. I think that allowing FPTA to continue to have a role, to continue to work with our other counties, Hart and others who have the same issue, is very, very important. What we don't want it to be seen as this is Pinellas County trying to bully the small rural counties. I think it will skew the results of the study, and it won't have the impact that we would like it to have. It won't be taken as a kind of an independent view. It will begin to look like this is something that we push to try to increase the money that we get, which in reality is a part of it, but we don't want it to be seen that way. That can certainly drive a wedge within the issue. So I think we have to be very careful in how we engage the commission and how we move forward and actually get it done.
Okay, we have some questions, so let's start with Mayor Peters.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. So when we do this study, and as I recall, I think, is the study being done kind of by the rural group? I mean, is it being Fox watching the hen house kind of thing?
Yeah, well, no. What we asked specifically is for an independent contract, for them to hire an independent contractor, so that it was not done strictly by the commission, who, as you can imagine, has a stake in the outcome. So they'll have to hire someone independently to do it. And I think what we've talked about working with them on is ensuring that there is, equal representation from both the rural and the urban and dense counties, to make sure that, again, that it's viewed as a truly independent look at not only, and by the way, not only the state of Florida, but a part of the study is to also look around the country at other innovative models of transportation disadvantage programs and funding, how other states are doing this, so that we can see if there's something here. Not only do we simply look at changing the formula and how that is laid out, but looking at other states and how they do it, and see if there's something we could bring.
And to that point, I guess my question is, let's assume that the study is done and shows that it's flawed and that there are other models in other areas. How do you then get that implemented or get it changed?
Well,
that's a process in itself.
Yeah, that's a great question. The legislature is going to get a copy of the report, and if it's not given to them directly, you can rest assured we're going to make sure they see it, assuming it says what we think it will. And the legislature then can take action on that formula, either through proviso language in next year's budget, or through just directive to the TD Commission to do things differently, or through a change in the law. There's lots of options on the table next session after that study comes out. And that was the point of the study. The point of the study wasn't necessarily just so we would know, what other people are doing or what changes we could make. It was really to have a product to take back to the legislature and say, here, we've told you this is a problem. An independent review has looked at it and has said, not only is there a problem, but here are some ways to fix it. It would become a priority. I believe it would become that's all to you, obviously, but I would think it would become a legislative priority of this body to push some of those changes forward once we have that study in hand. Again, hoping that it says what we think it will say.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Okay, so how do we get a seat at the table?
So again, I think what will happen is that working with the commission, we will. So what will happen is, like any agency, now that the budget is signed by the governor, even though it's not in effect, they are beginning to kind of wrap their arms around how these budget priorities are going to roll out, how they're going to set these various studies, commissions up, et cetera. So I think in working with the commission, knowing that they will want equal representation, again, from both urban and rural, we will ask the commission that someone from this body, or maybe more than one person from this body, have a seat at that table. I think that's a very, very important ask, and I think they'll be accommodating. I mean, they know where this came from. We have our champion in the legislature who put this in, who is very interested. He didn't do it just because we asked, but Senator Lavella does understand one of his goals, and not only as the incoming appropriations chairman, but the reason he had such a prolonged battle for the Senate presidency wasn't just to be Senate president, but it was he understands that there are some areas, specifically in these state formulas, where when they were created, Pinellas didn't have the strong voice in the legislature they may have now. And it's his goal over the next 2 years, we talked at length about this yesterday, to change a number of these formulaic issues in Tallahassee. So I think that he will probably, I shouldn't say probably, he will be very vocal, I think, with not only FDOT, but the commission, in having someone from Pinellas County, if not multiple people, represented on the commission.
I talked to him on the 19th, and he said the very same thing that you just said. And he says, Patty, I'm going to work with you really hard on the TD program. However, I am so angry, I don't know how I could have told you or the district legislative body, the one we went to in October,
The legislative delegation.
Legislative delegation, right, yeah.
that we don't want Uber or Lyft.
What? Say that again, because I'm sure I misunderstood you.
He doesn't want Uber and Lyft to be a part of the TD program.
He doesn't want Uber and Lyft to be a part of the world,
Right.
okay?
Right, that's it.
I mean,
That's a long-standing Central Valley issue.
it's a issue
Right.
between Brandis and Lat Valley,
Sure.
just to be real honest. And of course, Brandis is running around saying, nah, see what I did. And Lat Valley's going, excuse me, we already said, as a body, we don't want Uber and Lyft.
Well, to that,
You were there.
I was there. However, I would like to share with all of you that Pinellas County government just finished doing our citizens survey, and we went into the crosstabs of the polling that was done deep to be able to segregate by area of the county what the different survey results were, and we have beautiful big poster boards to show. And I'm sure it might not surprise you terribly to know that in Eastlake, which Senator Latvala specifically spoke about at that delegation meeting, guess what the number one issue was in Eastlake?
I have no idea. And that's
Lack
not-
of public transportation options.
Janet,
Okay, I'm just saying.
Janet.
There's a
I'm not-
disconnect. Alan?
I'm
Well-
just saying.
This is, Patty's saying, don't shoot the messenger.
Right,
She's
right.
just reporting
Janet,
back what
I
she
know.
was.
I get it.
I'm saying to you is the man with the pen that signs the check.
I'm sorry, he's
Okay.
wrong on this issue.
Well, let-
Whether he's
well,
right,
let-
wrong, or indifferent, he has the checkbook.
Well, let's do
Well,
this.
I-
I'm sorry,
I
Alan,
was
go
just going
ahead.
to say, so that is an issue that is much larger than PSTA. It's an issue that they will fight again in the next session. I had dinner with Senator Brands last night, and I don't represent Uber or the taxis, but he spent an hour talking to me about Uber, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And so it's an issue that he's going to file again next year. They're going to fight over the insurance requirements. My conversations with Senator Latvala have been this, that I understand his frustration with, and that we understand, the bigger issue that is Uber versus the taxis,
Right.
and that although he doesn't like it, he's not going to be punitive as long as whatever whatever program we put in place is fair to both. As long as both are included and the requirements, both insurance and background check, which is the big issue, which is not the big issue, but that's what they say the issue is,
Exactly.
are the same. That he knows he can't make that argument on his face if everything is fair,
Right.
and which is what, going back to the delegation meeting, which is what a number of the members of the delegation expressed frustration about, is are you giving some special accommodation to Uber and Lyft? If that's the case, we don't like it. If it's fair and everyone is meeting the same requirement and standard, then we are okay with it, or that we wouldn't necessarily fight it. So I think that is where we are. He continues to be that mindset that I don't think we will pay any price if we now. Would I want to go to Eastlake and throw in his face that we're going to start Uber and Lyft? No, I would not want to do that. But something that's not in his district, that is in the county, that is a pilot program, that actually I think could be very successful, is the first in the country.
It does create level playing field
Right,
for whoever
exactly.
wants to be a part of it.
That meets all of those requirements. I think is something that this group should be applauded for. And I think that he will continue to express frustration. But I don't think there's going to be a price to be paid
I'm
for
sorry,
that.
Well,
So,
it's
yeah,
okay,
okay.
Janet, it's all right. I'm just trying to get us.
I want to refocus
To
the
level
the
playing
the
field.
conversation a little bit. There are three issues, the state issues that I heard you guys bring up that I want to make sure we've all discussed to everyone's satisfaction. So the first is the TV allocation issue and the next steps with that. Okay. The second is the next steps with our efforts with FDOT on the Clearwater Express project. And then lastly, I just want to have a little further conversation about Senator Latvala and the issue with the Hart merger and our next steps there and sort of our thoughts in terms of where we're going in preparing the next year's legislative agenda. Is everybody okay with that order
One more.
of discussion? Okay, yes?
One more. What we have to do to change the ad valorem tax.
For St. Pete Beach.
St. Pete Beach treasurer.
Okay, we'll add that. We'll discuss that too. So,
Because it has to be
Mr. Chair, just to finish.
I'm sorry, I just want to finish myself.
Okay.
So if everyone's okay with that order of discussion on the TD allocation issue, I thought, Alan, you made a really good point about, making sure we continue to put the Florida Public Transit Association out front and us not owning that. And I one of the things we had discussed in our last meeting was whether we want to invite the executive director of the commission to Pinellas County and have a conversation with them about the formula allocation and, how it's being allocated and where they see that going. And I just wanted to get your feedback. Is that a good idea or is that a bad idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think there's any harm to be done. I would just want to be careful in how we request that meeting and what the topic is. If the topic is about the study and we want to place on the study commission or at some level, I think that could put a strong PSTA face on it. But I think if it is a general conversation about the challenges that the county faces and PSTA faces in the current environment, I think that's a very appropriate conversation to have.
Yeah, I'll make a quick observation. FPTA is very well served by its current statewide chair, who also happens to be Brad Miller.
Right.
And so I think,
there he is right here.
And so there may be some synergy in having the TD Commission come meet with FPTA.
Right.
And when they do that, you have Lisa McCoe, who runs FPTA, who happens to be a former employee of the TD Commission and knows it pretty well. And by the way, she has no inside information on this, but she thinks, given her knowledge of the commission, that they'll probably choose Cutter as the entity to do the study. It helps the Cutters in our backyard. And there's
kind of their go-to.
Kind of their go-to anyway.
Yeah,
so maybe, and I'm thinking out loud here, maybe the request for a meeting is to come meet with FPTA, and Brad happens to be sitting there as the chair of FPTA, and there's no secret about where he works. And the signal can be delivered that way as well, and put our face on it, but also have FPTA complete. That's completely an out loud thought, but
Brad?
That's a great idea. And the next, just this past weekend, we had our quarterly FPTA meeting, and this issue came up in Fort Myers, and I talked extensively to Lisa about it. And our next meeting is going to be in Clearwater Beach in August.
the stars are aligned.
But to Chair Diamond's suggestion that you made at the meeting, I learned also that the TD Commission, the board that the executive reports to, has had some change in membership, and for the first time, two Tampa Bay members have been appointed or nominated by the governor. I don't know, appointed to the TD Commission by the governor, including one very strong advocate from Hillsborough County. And so maybe the idea would be to go through the FPTA as we just discussed, but also maybe invite to this legislative committee these Tampa Bay members of the commission, because until just this month there wasn't anyone from Tampa Bay on the commission, and now there's two. So maybe that's it, and we can talk to them. They're from Hillsborough County, and they are very positive about Hart and the Sunshine Line, which is the Hillsborough TD provider. But maybe working with them to help them understand this study and what we're hoping to get out of it might be helpful.
That's a great idea. Any other conversation about the TD formula allocation issue? And if not, yes, Commissioner.
Just very briefly, I don't want to Duluth did the pool, but is there a role that T-Market can play in this? Kind of triggering on to the Tiger success in the bigger regions. T-Market includes rural counties.
Oh, you're talking about the Clearwater project?
No, on the TD issue, to involve T-Market and TD regional, just like we.
I think that just muddies the water at this point, but we need to fight it on the little pieces.
Let's all think about that. I mean, I think that the good news on this is that there is now a conversation taking place about the formula, and that was not taking place before. And so, you know, I think that there'll be a number of people that will want to participate in that conversation, whether we invite them or not. Okay, well, I think that's a great discussion on that issue, and I'm very pleased with, you know, how well everybody maneuvered on that during the session. I think that was exceptionally well done, and now we'll have to sort of keep playing this process out. Why don't we have some discussion next about the Clearwater Beach Express project and sort of where we are. It sounds like Representative LaPal is going to be working on a letter to FDOT to show the support of our Pinellas County delegation. And Brad, you want to talk a little bit from your perspective on what's
think
next?
that, again, since in the last month, Cassandra and I went and met with the district secretary and talked and apprised him of what our discussions with the delegation had been, and that he would be seeing such a letter. And I think there has been maybe either a change or maybe a new focused effort by the Florida DOT to, especially during the legislative session when they are getting bombarded by everybody for funding their transportation project in their neck of the woods, to tell everyone that the project needs to be prioritized by your Pinellas MPO, by your MPO. And there's some evidence. Well, that's what they're saying. But there's some evidence that the state legislature certainly does have strong influence over the Florida DOT, and things perhaps miraculously appear in the Pinellas MPO legislative priority list that once they receive delegation support. There was a project in St. Petersburg that recently that happened too. So this course of action where we have this joint letter, which really is modeled after when we did with the Fed so successfully, I think will be very helpful and will have strong influence on the Florida DOT then joining with PSTA to maybe even jointly sort of approach the MPO to make this a priority.
Good.
So I think we're really we're in a good position on that.
Okay. Questions?
Just a question. I think I may have brought this up before, and I don't know what role the airport authority would have in this, either supporting our cause for the DOT or also helping fund it. I mean, they're a huge component. They're the ones that bring these people to the airport that we're trying to get, in this case, to the beaches. And I don't know if they help support us in our effort for the DOT, or they're a source to help fund it. You know, it helps them as well. So I don't know if there's any thoughts on that, or maybe Jack.
We've been communicating with the airport about this project, and they have committed to writing a letter in support of the project. We have not talked to them about funding it, but they are clearly aware and extremely supportive.
Okay.
Great. I love the letters because it's some tangible evidence of, you know,
Paper trail
of community support, and it's also nice to show our board members who are not in these, you know, hour-and-a-half discussions what we're doing. So, you know, I think as soon as Representative LaPala gets the letter the way he likes it and gets the signatures from his colleagues, we can obviously circulate that to our board, and Cassandra, you know, if Joe Lopano or whoever from the airport ends up signing the letter you're working on, we can include that. So that's great.
Good.
Okay, any other discussion on that issue? I just wanted to have a little discussion about where we are with Senator Latvala and his concerns about Hart, and sort of now that the session is over, we all have a chance to kind of take a breath. And along those lines, we had talked a little bit in one of our meetings about trying to put together more of a joint state legislative priority list with Hart for next session, and sort of what you guys are thinking there.
Sure. Well, I'll touch on the merger. Kind of just to update everybody. I had a very lengthy conversation with Senator Latvala yesterday, where he expressed his desires yet again on the merger. Let me take a step back, and I'll give you what I think the playing field will look like going into the next two sessions. So obviously, I think we all know Senator Latvala will be the appropriations chairman of the Senate. That is obviously that is a key position in the Senate. He will get to push through a number of priorities. He'll also he won't get everything that he wants, but I think that he has made it very, very clear that a merger of these two organizations is a high priority of his. That he sees these two organizations working more closely together as a very, very positive thing for the region and transportation. It is very likely that Senator Brandes will be the TED appropriations chairman. That is not a done deal. That is not something that will be announced anytime soon. But I was with him last night, and he spoke very confidently that he believes. So he's been the transportation policy chairman for the last 4 years. That's kind of 2 years longer than most people stay a chairman of something. And he knows that that's probably not going to be where he is for the next 2 years under Senator Negron as president. But he will very likely be the TED approach chairman. So I think we will be in a very strong position as a county and as an entity going forward to accomplish a number of priorities. But on the merger specifically, the senator reiterated his desire to see them merged. My conversation with him has been, you can say merger. Merger can have 1,000 different definitions. What does merger mean to you? And he kind of laughed and he said, well, nobody's asked me that. I don't really know. And I said, well, great. That's what we need to work on. We need to work on, does merger mean one entity with one board, with one director, or does it mean two separately located entities that are formally aligned, but knowing that there are different priorities in both counties and different things that happen along the routes, that we still maintain two bodies. And he said, well, he's looking for efficiencies, and I think he has a vision. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that I think it's important, and we're going to meet, so I'll go further in depth, but I also have my staff working on a meeting with Senator Latvala to discuss some potential ideas that Catherine Egan and I, the executive director of HART, have been meeting religiously for the last year, maybe a little more, on what that might look like and how it might be accomplished, because both of these agencies have taxing authority, and they both have been set up by a legislative act. And I see in this document from their attorney, Hart's attorney, that Hart was set up within a general law, which troubles me a little bit because it's only specific to Hillsborough as far as I know. But I was hoping Alan would be here because I am not certain if PSTA was created by a local bill. So that's two separate legislative initiatives there that have to be really, dealt with.
Well, and I think to your point, Commissioner, that I think the senator understands that this is a more complicated issue than just saying you two go merge and go do great things.
Right.
I think he does understand that. I think that he has a vision of these two entities working together. I don't know that he has a definition or a pathway of how to get there. But what we've discussed, over a number of months, and again, just as late as yesterday, he met with Catherine Egan yesterday to talk with her directly about what he sees and where he would like this to go. I think he's going to want to have that same meeting here to discuss that. And I think that over the summer, what he and I discussed is that when we get to a point where we know what he wants, and we've given him some options on maybe how to get there from a technical transportation standpoint, not from a legislative standpoint, but how would this actually work? And we've given him some ideas, and he's able to digest that and come back. I think late in the summer, he will. What he would like to do is have everyone at the table, some subgroup of both boards and executive directors to discuss how do we move forward and get everyone's agreement that that's how we're going to move forward, and make it a legislative priority as much as we need to, but through whatever statutory mechanism they were created to get this done over the next 2 years. Maybe it's a half step the first year and the full step the next year. But I think that late summer he will request that these two entities get together and have a conversation with him to agree on the path forward on doing that.
Well, let me just make some comments from my perspective. I mean, we have a board workshop scheduled this summer. I respect the fact that, I respect Senator LaValle, his interest in this issue, and the leadership position that he holds in the Florida Senate, obviously. And what I would like to see us do is think about this issue less from a reactive perspective of we're reacting to this request, and instead come up with some sort of process where we're independently thinking about this and trying to be proactive in terms of why, how this might work, and then and have some meat on that process as to sort of what we're going to do to analyze this issue. I mean, there have been prior studies that have been done, but that's my perspective. I mean, I think we need to come up with our own independent course as to how we're going to look at this. And there are a lot of issues to it, far more than we have time to get into now. In terms of the legal issues and the planning issues from our, so I don't feel yet like we've worked through how we're going to do that. And then I think we can go back to Senator LaValle or whoever else is interested and say this is the process that we're going to use to look at this, sort of study this issue ourselves with heart. And so that's my thought. I know we have limited time today to really, we're not going to solve this issue today, but as opposed to just sort of being in this reactive mode constantly of meeting with him and him getting upset at different board members or expressing his opinions.
Well, that's not going to change. He's always going to be very reactive.
I think if we can show that we've set up some sort of process ourselves, or maybe it's a joint process with Hart to really look at this, that would.
And I would just point out that dating back years, even to when the initial study that he first got hot on this, and he wanted to study should they be merged. PSTA was then, and I think still today, viewed as a much more open party to the conversation than our friends across the bay. And so that continues to serve you well, and I think, Mr. Chairman, your point is well taken, is we as a group need to be open to the concept of whether it's joint purchases or mergers of different routes or lines or places where we can have cost savings, and maybe to the concept of a full-blown merger. But as long as we're not saying no, I think you're going to have a welcome audience in the Senate. As long as we look like good stewards of taxpayer money, looking at ways to be more efficient, looking at ways to be better at what we're doing, that's going to have an open audience.
Yeah, and Chairman, I'll just to build on your comments, I think you're exactly right. I think that's what the senator's looking for from this group. I think that he has a vision, but he's not a he is certainly a political expert. He's a legislative expert. He's not a transportation expert. He knows that this is a very complicated issue, and I think what he is going to ask in very short order. I know Brad. I think he asked for some emails from the board members, so you may all be hearing from him very soon. But he certainly expressed to me yesterday that what he would like is, he has a vision, and he's going to want the two groups, either separately or together, to discuss how do we, from a transportation system standpoint, the policy and transportation experts that comprise this organization at heart come together and figure out how do we actually get there. So exactly what you explained, I think, is what he's going to want. And again, later in the summer, to actually be able to present some of those ideas to him and show him how it could be accomplished and how it would benefit the region. And I think that's what he's going to do.
Commissioner Johnson?
I was, Bill and I and Brad were here, and you guys, for the meeting that you're talking about, which was held downstairs. And for you, Janet, to come as far as you have, is making all these meetings with Art, is something that I don't think any of us expected back then. It was contentious.
But it's not anymore. That was that.
Okay, but I'm saying, to have come this far, what he's talking about, when we sat downstairs, it was like Darth Vader against whomever with laser swords. It was that contentious. And Jack was sitting there, and that's how bad it was in the room. So for you to have come that far is major milestones from when it started. Do you remember, Brad? Did you feel like talking? Most of the time, it was, to say the least, it was uncomfortable. So that's my
We had Commissioner Johnson and then you, Janet.
The question that I have, or the quandary I see, is I still see Jack Lavala having a perception that there are significant savings that can be achieved through merger. And that separate from what is the good for Tampa Bay and from an economic standpoint, because he also talks about if we merge, we will be more competitive economically in the community. And I'd like to see us explore that second one more, and I don't know quite how we put that forward. Maybe that's what you were talking about, Mr. Chairman, or Madam Commissioner. That's my observation.
Janet?
So, and thank you for that setup, because it's a great synergistic thought process to what I want to say. So for the last year and a half, I've taken off my PSTA hat and my county commission hat, put my legislative hat on to try to figure out just exactly what is the cost saving and the benefit and the opportunity for economic development, given that we can accomplish some of these things. It's been one of my biggest frustrations from being on the commission, because I don't know if any of you have made the list, but I've identified about somewhere between 7 and 10 governmental agencies in our region that are working on transportation and transportation solutions. The savings bill, if I might go on that point, is the fact that every one of them are receiving, Harry, and millions of dollars from the feds to do studies. And that has been going on for decades in our region. The problem is they do these studies, they sit on a shelf, they don't do anything. And the other issue is they all work in silos. So they all have different agendas, different goals and objectives, and a different mission, and there's no synergistic anything that pulls it all together for the common good. We know from the economic development folks that lack of public transportation options, whatever that means, and there's a whole toolbox full of different things it could be, is the number one thing that's getting in the way of our ability to attract good jobs and corporate headquarters here. So if any of you have not taken the recent trip from downtown Clearwater out to Clearwater Beach, you have to want to pull your hair right out of your head, because you wonder, what are these folks thinking that they're allowing all this development, because it is the city of Clearwater, and there's no plan for transportation. You've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people there that can't get off the island. And it's critical because there's some incredibly wealthy folks that live on North Clearwater Beach that have to leave their homes and go to work every day. So this is not an option of getting this done. It's a question of how do we get it done in a way that everybody marches to the same drum, to the same tune, that rethinks how we spend our public dollars, so that we're not going out there in a referendum kind of way to create another green light debacle.
Well, those are excellent comments.
I'm thinking about
I
it.
like
I've
what
got
you're
a
saying.
plan.
What I think we should do is, my point was just that I think there needs to be some sort of process for us to be looking at this issue and thinking about it in a proactive way. And I don't think we can do that here. We don't have the time
We
today.
don't.
But maybe this is something that could be discussed at the executive committee meeting, or at our next legislative affairs committee meeting in terms of how we're going to do this, or how the rest of the board thinks maybe for the full board's discussion. But
I would like to suggest that we have a collaborative lab experience, because in going through that process, we will come out with a plan.
Well, that is
If
usually
any of
very
you have
productive
If any
to
of
be
you have
over
ever
there.
been through one,
Well, yeah. Well, let's do this. If nobody has, I know we all have a lot of feelings and thoughts on that issue. Just in the interest of time, I always laugh because the time on this agenda says every meeting that this is going to be an hour meeting, and it's never an hour meeting. We have too much work. It's more like an hour and a half is how we normally go, right?
it's important.
It is important. No, I know. It's like deja vu all over again. To look at that 10 o'clock and make that comment. But why don't we move on now, and we can come back at the other business at the end of our meeting and talk about whatever else we want to talk about. But let's just move on, because we have this request for proposal. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do you want to talk now about?
No,
I'm sorry.
I just want to ask what we need to do to get there. We're talking about getting some money, and I think since I was a little girl, that deal's been going on, and that's more than 50 years.
This is the deal with regard to the beach.
St. Pete Beach and
community.
Treasure Island, and it's a huge, huge, huge amount of money.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think I can maybe summarize where we are at in less than a minute. The beach representative on PSTA, Mr. Mark Dighton, and I went and met with the mayor of St. Pete Beach, and the city manager of St. Pete Beach, had a good discussion with her. I know Commissioner Ken Welch also had breakfast with the mayor and discussed this topic.
I did as well.
Okay. At least I can describe what our discussions were. She discussed her objectives and goals. She was open to discussing with her city council about the mechanics of perhaps joining PSTA or otherwise supporting of the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project, coming to her city and paying for that. And so the schedule, the next step in that process is for us to, and our staff is putting together some numbers, and then going to present those to the city of St. Pete Beach, and then present to their council in a workshop. We're also meeting with the cities of Treasure Island. City manager, I think that meeting is already scheduled for next week perhaps, or sometime soon, and then Madeira Beach.
And I have a meeting with Matt Campbell, city manager from Kenneth City, to discuss the same issue, because I ran into him on Sunday and we agreed that we would talk about that. You're more than welcome to join me if you want.
Oh, the issue, as you know, is it would require a referendum of the voters of St. Pete Beach to join PSTA. And the mayor and the city manager are fully aware of that. And there is no committal by them that they want to go down a green light path of any kind. And that's why they were sort of just going through this process. It'll take time. We have to meet with their commission, see where they're at with this. The hotels down in St. Pete Beach are very supportive of the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project coming to their city. They were the ones who called Representative Peters and got her to support it, and ultimately put pressure on FDOT to fund the study. So the St. Pete Beach folks have a regular meeting with the hotels, and we're going to. She invited me to come to the next one of those as well. She's wanting to be helpful, but she's not sure, at least from what I got from her, that either her council or her citizens would, want to join PSTA and levy a property tax, or maybe they just need to fund it out of their own budget.
So we don't have any leverage.
Well, can I ask a question? Brad, to Patty's point, weren't those 5 municipalities taken out of the formula by a resolution that Senator Jones did a gazillion years ago? I thought we got a letter from Zimmett that said that.
We had, years ago, we asked the legislature through a local bill to ask the legislature to add 2 additional county commissioners to this board. And as part of that letter, part of that resolution, we said we would not go use this expanded force to go and get them in and I think it was for a limited until 2010 or something. There was a date on it. That date has since passed. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, maybe, but I think we need to take a look at that and see if there's a way to readdress that issue. I mean, the world has changed since that was put in place.
It was just expand the number of seats on the county commission. We were trying to get the majority of the commissioners on our board so that we would be better off as we approach green light. We weren't trying to push them in. But it had nothing to do with the way our legislation is written, which requires a referendum to jump.
So, back to what I was asking is, do we have any leverage? I mean... Well,
the question remains, Commissioner. We have a very important project called the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project, which will be a major, significant improvement connecting to a beach.
Right.
And the discussions I understand that the county commission has had, PSTA, we had a little bit of it with the mayor, was should the decision on which beach to serve with the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit be based on this decision of which city is paying into the ad valorem of PSTA? Should that have an impact, or should it be based solely on the federal criteria of ridership and development, etc.? And we're going to have that discussion with St. Pete Beach and amongst ourselves and the PSTA board. That will be certainly a decision. I think Commissioner Welch went, and during his breakfast, he said, "You don't play ball. We're going to Madeira Beach."
Which is what Representative Peters wants anyway.
Yeah, but the ridership estimates, because of the development that is already on St. Pete Beach, the hotels, the ridership is higher to St. Pete Beach than it is to the existing Madeira Beach that is a member of PSTA, because the development isn't there yet. Right, but
well,
it is coming.
It's in the works, and it's going to be huge if it all flies. And
Both of them.
what?
Yeah.
There's 2.
Yeah, the 2 developments. Anyway, so that's the discussion we're going to have.
Any other questions, Commissioner?
Okay, so can we
Thank
move on
you.
to this last thing?
Yeah, okay. That was a good discussion. Thank
It
you
was
for bringing
fabulous.
that up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's move on to looking at, we have our upcoming request for proposal for our state lobbyist contract. Brad, you want to talk about this one?
So we are moving forward with issuing a request for proposals for our state legislative team. And maybe bittersweet that our 5-year contract with Ray Robinson and Susky Consulting is ending, but it is. And we've known this for now a year and been planning that right after the legislative session is over to issue this so that we would shorten the window of when we will be without a consultant to assist us, especially in light of all the things that are going to happen this summer with Senator Lavelle and others. I'm looking at the schedule. The tentative schedule we have right now is to issue this RFP next week on the 13th, with the proposals due in a month on May 12th. That's Luema, our procurement director's latest schedule. I think we're going to be able to stick to that. At the legislative committee meeting last month, we had a discussion about this. Ever since I've been at PSTA, it's been for all procurements. It is my feeling that the selection committees that we make up to evaluate and make a recommendation to the PSTA board on any contract be made up of subject matter experts. So if we are buying bus parts, we have people from our maintenance department make the recommendation. If we have our marketing RFP, which we just did, we have marketing people, etc. For a government affairs legislative committee, I don't think there's any other contractor that PSTA board members are involved with as much as the legislative affairs teams. And we discussed last month about how we could set up a process, a good process, that board members, like the members of the legislative committee, could provide input to this this selection process, because you all have had some interaction, not only with Ray Robinson and Susky, but others. And so what we have done, I've worked with Alan Zimmett, our attorney, on developing a process, and at your places is essentially a reference form that we've come up with that once the proposals are in early May, we will fill out the names of this and send you and the whole PSTA board members these forms, and it'll be optional. If you know of the firm or have had any dealings with the firm, to make some notes on this page and turn it back in, and that way we'll get input by the board. We believe it's a fair way to get the good input from the board members, because we're notifying the proposer, we're notifying the potential bidders in the RFP that we're doing this, that the board members will be apprised of their proposal and provided an opportunity to provide comment. I think it's a new proposal. It's a new system we have in place that I think will be really good.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Long.
I have both, frankly. My question is, the RFP that is going out, has it been released yet?
Not yet.
Is it possible for us to see it?
Most certainly, yeah. Yes.
I would like to see that. And for the rest of my colleagues, I'll tell you why. And I'm just reiterating my experience when I first went with Brad to Tallahassee. Some of you may or may not know that at one chapter in my life, I had a public affairs and government relations company of my own. And in any contract that I had, there were specific measurements, there were specific goals, and there were specific deliverables, most importantly. And so I was quite stunned when I went to Tallahassee with Brad to realize that none of what had been in my contract was or seemed to be appropriate for our group. And so Brad and I have had many conversations about that, but I would like to see the RFP to just ensure. I think we have a responsibility, as a board and as a legislative committee, to look at that RFP and see if what we want in it is included, number one. And then we actually have a good benchmark to evaluate later on whether or not our team did what we asked them to do.
And thank you, I'm glad you brought that up. The RFP that we have developed does have a whole set of performance criteria and deliverables to require the recommended consultant to provide. I thank you, Commissioner Long, for suggesting that. When we extended the Gray Robinson and Susky contracts last year, we developed those criteria. I think you might remember seeing those.
We did, and, you know, for
That's
those,
in the new RFP too.
if you've ever been a legislator or worked with a legislator really, really closely, you know a good public affairs, government relations person, and you know what one doesn't look like. So I think for us, we really need, especially now when we're at such a critical time, to really have our eyeballs on the dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Very good comments. Other questions or comments? I have a few, if no one else does. I just think it's important, Brad, that we communicate, so it's going to be issued next week, and then the proposals are due May 12th. Is that what you said? Okay. I think it's important that we send out a reminder my suggestion would be for you to send out a reminder to the board, and whether it's from you or from Mr. Zimmett, about the RFP process and how it works in terms of, I believe there's a cone of silence while the RFP is out. Is that right?
That's right.
And so I think it's important for board members to be familiar with that and understand that. In other words, we're not supposed to be speaking with people that have that are bidding on the RFP during that period, right?
That's right.
Okay, and
About
then
the bid.
about the bid, right? Obviously,
You can still call Robert and I about legislative
well,
issues.
and we will, because
Right.
you guys are
Right.
have to earn the last couple months of your keep here. So,
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I mean, explaining the scope of what is and is not permitted, so that the board has that information and that advice before we get into the period. I think it's important if that communication can go out before the RFP goes out, so that there's no issues there. I think that's important.
Indeed,
So,
we will definitely do that to the whole board.
yeah, and I think, I appreciate the work you and Alan did on these questions, and I think it's important when you send these out to the board to just indicate. I mean, my idea was that my thought in reading this was that we have so many board members who serve in local government, like Commissioner Long on the county commission, that have worked in other, on behalf of other governmental entities with lobbyists, that they can bring some additional insight from their other experiences, separate from PSTA, and we have a format that's very transparent, that's giving that input to the selection committee. And that this is it in terms of the opportunity to provide that feedback, that we want board members to provide feedback if they've had prior working experience with lobbyists on behalf of their other governmental entities that they've served on, the cities and counties, but that that it should be communicated through this form, so that the selection committee all has the benefit of that information. Commissioner?
Just glancing at the questions here, all of them go down to, except for the last one. The last one says before the RFP process begins. So I thought I heard Mr. Miller say that this form would be sent out after we got the proposals. What was the sequence? And I missed that.
Yeah, so the proposal we received, and I'm just looking at this, there's been a revision to this, or an update to this. It's essentially the same format, but we just revised it a little bit.
This one here?
Yeah.
So don't fill this out?
You don't need to fill that out. So their proposals are not coming in until May 12th. So sometime after May 12th, we will send to the board a listing of the proposals we received, copies of, hopefully electronic copies of the proposals that the firms have submitted for you to review, just as if you were on the committee, the selection committee. And then, but it's your choice. If there's a proposal in there from a firm that you have dealt with at the City of Clearwater in some capacity, then provide any input on this form. And And the form will be filled out with the name of the firm, so that you just find that form and fill that one out and send it in. And any board member can do the same.
So the sequence is that really question 9, because the RFP process has begun at that point, to your point,
Yes.
Commissioner, so
That's right, and I think
maybe
we
it should
changed
be
that.
said something like that the selection evaluation committee should consider, beyond. And am I right in thinking about this the way I was thinking about this when you first presented this idea was that if we've had interaction like from the city of St. Petersburg or the city of Clearwater or through other work, not necessarily through PSTA work. In other words, the selection committee knows the work that these firms have done because they've been doing it for PSTA for a while. So it's only if you've had interaction with other bidders that you've worked with on behalf of the county or a different municipality.
Yes,
Yeah.
although I don't think we're going to restrict.
Okay, or
board
any
members.
experience you may have had, you
Yes.
can provide input. So, okay, I think the questions are very good, and I like that there's, some sort of plan for transparent, feedback from board members to the committee. So,
Who's on the selection committee, do we know?
We're going to have a selection committee of PSTA staff that actually reads through all the proposals. But at the legislative committee's suggestion, we wanted to come up with a way to get other input from the PSTA board, before the recommendation comes back to this committee with a recommended firm. So that's what we've come up with. So essentially, the board members are not necessarily on the committee.
yeah, and that's the way it's usually, almost always done. And we don't want to change the process. We just want to.
Yeah.
The PSTA staff. Now, sometimes I understand through our procurement process that you'll invite somebody like from the Nellis County staff to participate, but or a different. But I think it's good that we basically followed the same process here and just provide some way to provide input for board members who want to. So, okay. Any other discussion on that issue? All right. Well, I think we've made it. I will work harder next meeting before the meeting to put together an agenda with some topics and time frames. I apologize that we went past 10 o'clock, but I'll try to work in advance with you, Brad, to put together an agenda so that people know in advance how long it'll be, because I know everybody's busy. So, is there any other business? Any board members want to discuss?
I
Yes.
just have one announcement I want to make sure you're aware of, because I know my staff has been talking to Rachel, I think, but April 27th, our board meeting, it conflicts with our county's Employee Appreciation Day, and the 4 commissioners usually work at that. So,
We are
just FYI.
aware of that and working to have in the spirit of what Commissioner Diamond was talking about, have a tight agenda, and confident that like the last 2 meetings, we will be done. I think the hope was to get done by 11. So that you
Well,
can go.
it's at Sand Key, so we have to have time to drive there.
Yes. With the,
And there's
the gondola.
a lot of
Trying to get
With
there.
that.
There's a lot of traffic and not good public
You
transportation
saw the
ways
lovely
to get to
video
the
of,
beach.
with Mr. Jones and I riding the ferry. That might be an option for the county.
Well, I just want to thank everybody, our Federal Affairs team.
right now.
I want to thank our Federal Affairs team and our state team for just a great meeting, and I want to thank all the board members for their active participation. Yes, Commissioner.
I just wanted to say one thing. When Brad and I went to Tallahassee, thank you guys, we could have never made it, we could have never seen it, we didn't, it was a hodgepodge, as you well know, Janet. But I appreciated you guys, and I appreciated your guidance, I appreciated you sitting there every minute and keeping us up to date with what was going on. it was awesome. These guys were just terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Brad too. Brad, great meeting, great job, and staff, great work on all of this work. So, okay, so we're adjourned, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Thank you.
You want some more coffee?
Okay.